That's okay. Okay, so we are going to start the reflections part. And now I hope you enjoyed watching the video. So the first question is about what kind of challenges they face and then how they overcome. Also, they'll talk about what duties they fulfilled during this project production stage. Right?
I was the translator. One difficulty I had was identifying the words that you guys spoke in your videos, because sometimes the audio was hard to hear, or you said a word that I didn't know. So I had to listen over and over to make out the syllables. But I used lots of dictionaries. I did trial and error, and I also had Kumi Sensei check over my dictation so that I could catch everything you guys said. And then after that, I was able to translate pretty well. With translating, spoken Japanese tends to have run-on sentences, so I did have a little trouble figuring out when to stop a sentence for subtitling purposes. But I think I managed to translate it naturally with natural stops and stuff.
I'll give it like. So for the video, I did most of the subtitling, most of the text that you see on the screen. So that included the credits at the end and the introduction at the beginning. For subtitling, I didn't think it was going to be difficult at first because, I mean, as I watch anime or like anything that needs to have subtitles, I think, oh, well, you just put the translation in and then it kind of just happens naturally. But the more I did it, the more, I don't know, obstacles I kind of ran into with knowing where to place like specific phrases before they end in Japanese, because the sentence structure between English and Japanese is almost the opposite. It's almost reversed because the verbs come at the end. So yeah, the main challenge for me was figuring out where to put the phrases so that they flowed coherently with what you guys were saying in Japanese. But overall, I think it was really insightful for me to do this, and I think I, in a way, learn more about the language, about both languages, by doing this subtitling.
My job was mostly looking through news articles and trying to like write and help form the narrative while also collecting external information. So the main challenges was mostly just trying to find consistent, reputable sources that gave very clear and distinct information about Japan, specifically in its response to the coronavirus. It was just parsing a lot of data, but I think it was really fun, mostly because it was interesting to read about various cultural and national responses. And it was also just kind of interesting to go back in time and read an article from February that was like, oh, there's only 6 cases and that's it. So it was both interesting and a fun thing to do, and I'm glad I was able to do it.
So my responsibility was actually editing the video, putting it together, placing all the clips, deciding which clips to use. So I think that was the toughest part. Like, you all gave so many good responses, and I wanted to keep the video to like around 20 minutes. So it was just figuring out which clips to use, which parts of the clips to use, and making sure I just formed making sure we filmed all these sort of like questions that didn't necessarily flow together when you guys answered them, and put them into a coherent story. And I just did that through watching the clips quite a few times and just trying a bunch of different things. And I've always really enjoyed that. So I think it was a really fun experience for me.
Okay, so my role was the narrator. It's pretty easy compared to what everyone else has done. So essentially, I guess the biggest challenge of being the narrator is making myself understandable to our foreign audience. But I guess it was it was insightful to see everyone, because my Japanese isn't as good as the other members in our team. So it was good to see something that I want to grow to or aspire to grow to as well. So, but yes, that was my experience.
All right, thank you very much. And then now I'd like my students to comment on like what they learned through watching the Kansai students' responses to the coronavirus in Japan.
I think the most interesting thing I learned from the videos, well, there was a lot of interesting things, but the one that stood out to me the most was the lack of technology knowledge when it comes to online classes, and also owning your own computer, because in America, in our universities, almost everyone carries a laptop with them to class or has one at home. So when we went to online classes, that wasn't as big of an issue as you guys expressed on your side.
So for me, the most interesting aspect I would say is, even though America and Japan are different countries, most of the responses that you guys gave are actually pretty similar to how people are responding here. That people hope that this virus is going to end by the end of this year. That the government hasn't really, the government response has kind of been not as great as what we were hoping here in America. So even though we're living in two different places, the response has kind of been uniform, which is really interesting to me.
My response is really similar to Cameron's. I was really kind of surprised by just the like universal nature of the coronavirus, kind of just really making it hard to interact and trying to like really pushing people towards new ways to try to meet each other, and also just having similar feelings of feeling trapped and feeling unable to contact other people. It was upsetting to hear, but it also kind of made me feel a little bit better to know that like everyone in the world is going through similar things right now, and it's just a rough spot for everyone. But it also made me reassuring to hear that countries like Japan and other countries are like getting their curve to flatten and decrease. So hopefully for many countries, maybe not the US, it will end soon.
Again, kind of similar. Again, my main takeaway was I was really interested by your responses on like the sort of the government response, because that's like kind of the big thing I've been thinking about with like the US. And I don't know, I think people tend to sort of, just with all kind of cultures that are separate from their own, kind of generalize when other people are like sort of in their like feelings on the government and stuff like that. So it's really interesting to see all the kind of varied opinions and sort of like takes on these like big level like decisions that happen up high, and notice that like that's something that is kind of universal.
Well, before I really looked into coronavirus in Japan, because the cases were so low comparing to other countries, I kind of had the assumption that, well, you know, the Japanese government must be doing something right. But, you know, after seeing, you know, the videos and all of the responses, it was interesting, and it was kind of surprising how unhappy or that people seem to be with the Japanese government. So it's just like home. So I don't know, I thought that was interesting.
Great, thank you very much. Any like final comments from any of you? Not really. All right, I guess then I'd like to conclude this presentation with like a big thank you applause from all of us. Yeah. はい、ありがとうございました。